listening to Delilah in iHeartRadio, and it is a, how do you say, doctor flipping it, Dr. Drew and so on, in a softer sense, staying at the high level or macro level of the relationship. Instead of Adam and Dr. Drew, they got into the micro of the relationship, the in-bed intimacy of the relationship. Plus, I listened to Loveline all the time, and the only thing on Loveline was heterosexual talk. And Adam Carolla is a hardcore Republican, and Republicans are naturally against abortion and the LGBTQ. So, Loveline and Dr. Drew always stayed with a heterosexual narrative, which is why I listened to the show. I wanted to learn better intimacy as a male who is heterosexual, how I can bond more deeply with a heterosexual female, how I could honor the Bible and two can become one, and then teach my children the same, how this is the only path and there is no alternative path. Only heterosexual. There is no alternative path. But I'm here in the Pewaukee Business Center, and the Chicago Executive Airport used to be the Pewaukee Executive Airport. And I wrote them a ton to the Pewaukee Executive Airport site. So they used to have an email, and I wrote all kinds of ideas to them. This is the Pewaukee Business Center, where on this street sign here, one of the founding members of this was Walsh Brothers. And it says it on that sign. You can't see it. Need to upgrade my phone. Cameras not as good as they should be. But again, they could do a software upgrade from Samsung, working with Google, and use the software with existing pixels to refine the pixel technology in the phone through the software, and they can change it. Even being able to maybe create more pixels. Truly, changing the programming could change the amount of pixels, and hence enhancing the camera on the old phone, making it more valuable, and that means making the new phone market more stable instead of discounting it. And so, as you saw through my research before, the sales price of the used determines the sales price of the new, because when the used comes down in value, the new is worth less. It pulls it down in value. So this is why pre-certified cars, this is Walsh Brothers, we did all kinds of piston rework for Caterpillar, and then we did Detroit Diesel Ellison, reworks of the transmission so they could rebuild existing. So again, we can do this with engine motors and that, and Walsh Brothers can expand by reworking them. And they can use new plating technology if the pistons are wore down, putting a new plating on top of them, drilling micro little holes in the existing piston, and then putting a coating of new material that would bond into the existing piston, making it not like a flat surface bonding, but rubbing it, the whole piston, opening up the pores of the metal, removing the finishing or the glaze, and opening it back up, and then little dimples in the glaze drilled with little small micro drill holes that the metal will leach through the pores and right material combination of the micros, nanoparticles in the metal that will leach into those little drill holes and reach into the pores because you rubbed off the finish of it. Remember, the pistons have a smooth finish. You rub off the finish of it, make it coarse, and it opens up the pores, and the new metal can coat with the old metal, synergizing. They don't do that when they do street repairs. The old material and the new material, they don't create a coarse interaction. So the new material will bond into the old material. But here's the Waltz Brothers van, and they should have a fleet of these. I don't know why they only have one, but here's the van, and I'll pull up to it. So again, here's the van, and as you see it, I'll pull in a little bit closer, and you can see the precision machining. That little thing with the plus inside of it is the scope that they use to look at parts under the microscope and to make sure that the pieces meet the quality standards. So now, to prevent this disagreement in part quality, every part now can be put under the microscope, and the microscope is integrated with a high-speed camera, and it takes images of each part under the microscope. You would have a belt that would spin and rotate the part, and it would be under a microscope taking images of the part in each of the components, and then using artificial intelligence to flag any imperfections to be looked at by those in inspection. And then the client would get that, and Waltz Brothers would keep that, a copy of the film, in their archive as liability protection, and also to look at the precision of their machining over time so they can see where they were compared to where the new machining is. And when somebody tries to sell them a machine, Waltz Brothers would have them create a sample for an existing client. Do you want to sell me a new CNC technology? Here's an existing part we do. This is the CNC operation. Do the operation and then give us it back, and our inspection will inspect it and look at the quality of your CNC machine to the existing quality of our CNC machine. And if it is that much better, we will send a proposal to our clients, Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and the others, that does this meet their standards of improvement. And if they say yes, we can raise the quality of our parts that we give to our strategic partners, and hence, by their approval, we will ask them for funding to purchase the new equipment. And they will give us the micro lending to purchase the new CNC machine to build the new parts with higher quality. So they will micro lend us, and we will pay them back the money as we produce the parts. And how do we do it? We give them a discount on each part. We discount what we charge on the part. And that discount is a payment back to them, a recapture. And eventually, once we pay them back, the cost of the part will inflate to its full value, no more discounting, and we will keep that extra margin. So it could be a 5-year recapture, depending on, the cost of the parts and how many parts we make. And so it could be a year recapture, it could be a 5-year recapture, but they're short-term loans, not long-term. And then we get greater profitability, but we also can use those machines for other vendors. It's not exclusive to them. Any downtime, we can use the machines to make parts for other vendors. And so we have them as our strategic. Our bank is for our expansion and everything, where we want to expand our building, where we want to purchase new land and open up secondary operations. That's where the bank gets its money. We get our money for our machine updates from our partners that we already make parts for. And they get higher quality in return, making their parts more competitive in the marketplace. So it's a win-win. And they finance their own, basically, evolution, protecting their marketplace, and they can charge more to their existing clients. They would bump up the price to their existing clients a little bit for the improved quality. So they would make interest on the loan to us through a discount on each part. And so it's not only the payment of the loan, but the discount would include an interest premium, and that interest premium would have a risk factor premium, which would be low, but they would get the money back, and it would be protected against deflation, and it would have, truly, it's above deflation, and they would make a premium. So they would end up with more dollars than they lent. And so the purchasing power parity would be locked in. They would end up with more dollars, and they would be able to charge who they sell it to for a little bit more money. So it would overall increase their profit margins, but it would decrease our cost of lending for new equipment. And we would have already our vendors online. The people that we're vendors for already approved the investment in upgraded technology, because they have to prove to us that it makes a better part. And then we take that better part and use that to interest our partner in purchasing the equipment. And so by them showing us and proving their technology works, we can show our client, and we can upgrade our facilities and our capabilities, and they would have to include, with buying the machine, training for all of our personnel on their machine. Why? It's only in their best interest, because our machinists can use it to its full capability. So they would provide detailed training for our staff to get better at CNC machines, as say, or if it's a grinding machine, or a CNC is a churning machine. But anyways, it's deburring, OD, ID, and all those different types of machines. This is what they would need to do to get our business. They would have to prove, and we could buy used machines if those used machines are better than our existing machines. But they would have to prove that that machine technology is better, because we have to prove it to our clients, and this would be a fiduciary standard for the machining industry. We have to produce better parts for our clients, we must prove it to them. We hold our foot to the fire, and we will prove to our clients that we're constantly working to make them stronger, that we have their back, and we will always make them stronger. So overall, aviation will get safer, not only on the military side, but on the commercial side. And that includes helicopters and drones. So again, we can do this. And again, they would hook up the microscope to high-speed cameras taking imaging, and we can send that to their people, their inspection. So the parts can be reviewed. Every part can be reviewed by the AI, but their inspection can go over the film, and they can look at each of them. As I said, each part has to get an embedded number, and you can embed it with nanotechnology, but every part has its own identification number. And we can send the high-speed, high-resolution imaging to them to get pre-approval, and then they're free to inspect it again. But we also have it to see if somebody damaged it in shipping. Oh, it protects us against FedEx and all the freight forwarding companies, that if they damage something, we know how the part was made. We have the images and everything to prove in court that it wasn't us or somebody installed the part. And it protects our vendors, that some mechanic at American Airlines or United Airlines or Delta damaged the part through their installation, and it wasn't Boeing, it wasn't Lockheed, it wasn't Raytheon, it wasn't any of them. It was whoever did it, including military personnel that replace parts. That makes espionage easier to find, that somebody tampered with a part. So we don't want espionage, somebody, being able to tamper with a part like they show in the movies, cutting of the brake line or something. And remember, in all the systems, they should show loss of pressure. So if the brake line is cut, the fluid levels are monitored. It has a float, and it shows the fluid levels are down, even in the gas tank. The car knows how many miles per gallon it has a float in the gas tank, and the fluid went down knowing it has a gas leak, or the brake fluid went down, or the oil fluid went down, and it knows it has a leak, but also it's a loss in pressure, because when you have a leak, you also have a loss in pressure. So the pressure sensors plus the floats cross-reference and say, somebody cut your brake line. Somebody, or Caterpillar machines, the line is leaking. The hydraulic line is leaking on the plane, or the hydraulic line is leaking on the John Deere tractor. So it can tell you the line is leaking, how fast the line is leaking. And then it can have the sensors, the pressure sensors, telling you where the leak is, because the change in fluid, amount of fluid from one point to another point, because the leak is in between, the amount of fluid will be less when it moves from this point to the next point, and there will be a pressure differential because there's less fluid in the tube as it passes over the leak. The leak reduces the amount of fluid, which reduces the pressure, and it tells you the leak is right there, and it's between sensors, obviously, so it tells you what area the leak is in. And this can go into automotives, telling the mechanic exactly where the seal is broken on, piston motor, exactly where the seal leak is. The loss in pressure is on the right side, and it's leaking right here. So all of that can be done, and with Samsung and others, Google and programming and Microsoft. And yes, I'm with Apple now that who's leaving? Tim Cook is leaving. So since he's not repenting, I would go with Apple if he repented. But since he's leaving and not repenting, now I recommended Apple. But I am strongly against any type of sodomy. It is disgusting and filthy, and that's why I'm against Buddhist monks that preach it. And they preach you don't need a female, and that's why I'm against Catholic priests. They preach you don't need a female. And the Bible preaches interdependency. God created Adam and Eve. That interdependency. I'm sick and tired of one side making the others, like the women's lib movement, that women can do everything and they don't need a man, that increased the amount of lesbians in the United States. And it did. Even Rush Limbaugh recognized that. The boom in lesbians. Because they said they don't need a man, like Billie Jean King. We don't need a man. I understand. She's a professional tennis player. He's not. She should win. If she didn't win, it's a joke. He's not a professional tennis player. He doesn't practice all the time. It was no big feat that she won. She should win. But if she went against Agnes, if she went against Borg or McEnroe and that, they would crush her. That's why in mixed doubles, the man plays against the man, the woman plays against the woman. It's the same in mixed doubles golf. The woman goes to the woman's tee, the man's from the man's tee, and the man competes against the man, and the woman competes against the woman. So even in our co-ed sports, it's not man against woman, it's man against man and woman against woman. Sharpening the sexes. And you want to get away from that. You want to get away from what is righteous and what is good. And you want to sell out. And Hollywood keeps on running this narrative, and they've promoted pedophiles and LGBTQ and you name it. Unbelievable destruction. My old movies with Robert Petrie, the TV show and everything, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and all of that stuff was awesome. Truly. And now it's totally different. At least, and what he did was, in Hail Mary, he showed that he could be trusted. That as he saved him, he would save him. And he went back and saved the alien. So, alien to him, but to the alien, we're aliens. Remember that. So, if we run into aliens, remember, as we see them as foreign, they see us as foreign. There's two sides to a coin. So, remember that when if this ever happens, that you treat them with dignity and respect, and they should treat you. But the thing is, can't get it lost in communications. That's why the Steven Spielberg movie with the lights and the sound and that, trying to create a universal communication. That's the bridge. But remember, we're the alien to them. And that's what Hail Mary shows. And so each sees each other as foreign, as a potential threat. But the movie was well done. I really liked the movie. And I did like the rock creatures. And then him coming a teacher at the end to all the, I guess they're rock or whatever they are. I forget what elements they're made out of, but again, it was a pretty touching and beautiful movie. So, lots of good points. But getting to Walsh Brothers and these manufacturing, we can move to another evolution where we trust and verify, just like the IRS trusts you, and then they verify by cross-referencing. And they trust you, and you break the trust, you go on the blacklist. So again, we set up a culture of this where we show them we're willing to look at your new technology, but we need to run it off of our clients to see if they think it's significant enough where they will invest back in us to purchase the new technology to move it forward. And even if we do an indirect loan, and that's fine, you can compete for machining loans. It doesn't have to come with them. We would charge them a premium. They wouldn't get a discount. They approve it, and then we would tell them how much we're going to increase the pricing if we have to go to outside lending. But we give them a choice, and they have to figure out where their portfolio and thing is, and maybe it's better for us to do outside lending. Outside lending can have their pitches. I'm not closing them out. If they can bring some added value, then we won't get it from the client. We'll get it from Chase or Bank of America or whatever it may be. But they have to prove their worthiness, that we're getting something in return, something that we consider valuable, that we would use an outside source instead of Boeing giving us the money, as an example. And every business has to do that. You don't want shareholder dilution. You don't want to put more debt, and you can bank on your partners. Truly, banking on your partners. But you have to worry about, you can't get overly concentrated. So it's a hub and spoke. So you have to force outside lending as well, so you don't get too concentrated. Because if you sever ties with that partner, like Boeing severs ties with Walsh Brothers, then Walsh Brothers is at risk of funding. Too much concentration in Boeing giving us loans. So even if they're willing, we can't be too indebted. So it's balancing it correctly. So sometimes you turn down it even when they're willing, because you want to diversify to make sure you have balance in your lending, where if they pull something from you, that you're not all of a sudden looking for funding, and now you have to do a fire sale type of loan and like, yeah, I'll take 35%. So it's balancing it. But anyways, I'm going to leave this here.